Hey, sup? I'd like to say a special hello to all the ladies out there. I'm available. Have you ever wondered why the oil companies and the politicians don't seem to give a shit if this planet turns into a charred cinder and the rest of us die? Well, one reason that comes to mind for those of you who have not heard of this, toxoplasmosis. This is a real thing. It comes from a parasite called toxoplasma. And what this thing does, it affects people's brains. And it's estimated that over 1/3 of the Earth's population is infected with this. Over a third. That's a lot. I mean, like at least a third. It could be a half or more. It could be 3, 4, 5, 6 billion people. You know, let's say half. That's still 4 billion people, right? But this thing, what they've found that in when it infects a rat's brain, what happens is, see, normally if a rat smells cat urine, it flees because it knows there's a cat nearby. Doesn't want to get eaten. When this toxoplasma infects a rat, it affects the rat's brain so that the rat does not experience fear anymore. It smells the cat urine. It knows there's a cat in the vicinity, but it does not flee. It does not flee. And because it doesn't feel that fear that it's naturally supposed to fear. The the toxoplasma, blocks or interferes with the rat's natural, thinking process, whatever. And the rat hangs around and gets eaten by the cat, right? And they found it has the same effect or a similar effect on humans. See, that's why you cat owners out there, you better be careful, because the cat eats the rat, then shits out, takes a shit, and the toxoplasma is in the cat's litter. And if you're handling that litter, that's one major way it gets into humans. So be careful. I doubt we're going to get any cat owners to give up their cats. So this thing is going to spread, man. Even worse than it already is. I mean, it's almost like a zombie virus. You might wonder, like I wondered about this. I mean, again, that would explain why a lot of people don't seem to give a shit about, climate change, pollution, massive amounts of waste and garbage that are piling up. There's giant islands. The currents in the ocean bring together all kinds of waste, water bottles and shit, and there are giant islands of just waste and plastic floating in the oceans, and nobody seems to give a shit. They're cutting down the rainforest, which is going to deprive us of oxygen, which we kind of need to live. That's what I learned in school. Somewhere along the line, I learned that we need oxygen to live. I don't know. I could be wrong. I could be talking out my ass here. You'd have to look it up. Ask a scientist. But anyway, apparently we need oxygen to live, and trees produce oxygen. You cut down all the trees, no more oxygen. Nobody seems to give a shit. Politicians don't care. The corporations don't care. They just keep cutting down the trees and shoving fossil fuels down our throats when solar energy solar power and wind power technology have been around for over 70 years. They don't seem to give a shit. One answer to that could be toxoplasmosis, people who are infected with that simply removes a person's natural instinct for self-preservation. Fear is not necessarily a bad thing. It can be. I mean, if you live in fear, if your whole life is about, being in fear, but fear itself, the natural kind of knee-jerk reaction, if you're threatened or your life is in danger, yeah, you're supposed to feel fear. That's how you preserve yourself. That's called self-preservation, but that has been removed from billions of people, and that's a real thing. Like I said, look it up. Toxoplasmosis. Toxoplasma parasite. It's real. It's not a conspiracy theory. It's not something somebody made up. It's not something I pulled out my ass. This shit is real, and billions of people are infected with this. Isn't that a little bit scary? I mean, if you're already infected, obviously you're not. It won't concern you, right? Because you're halfway to being a zombie already. But those of us who are not infected, it should, raise a red flag. So that could be one reason why people just don't give a shit what happens to the planet and what happens to the rest of us. Look at these mass shooters. This is happening 2-3 times a week now, or more, at least in the United States. And it does happen in other places. It's happened here in Canada. Yes, here in Utopia. Yeah, it has happened. These people, half of them at least get shot by the cops. And they don't seem to give a shit. They go out and they shoot a bunch of people, knowing full well that they'll probably get shot by the cops. And they don't care. I mean, that's one factor. There are definitely other factors. Like, I think the main motivation of people like that is just stress, right? We live in a stress. If you boil it all down, you can look at this factor and that factor, but if you boil it all down, it's stress. Man loves to complicate things. Okay? Life is not that complicated, but man and woman, let's not be sexist here, man and woman have complicated life to a ridiculous degree. And people just can't handle it. They lose their shit. And when you lose your shit and you have no fear of death anymore because you're infected with this thing, I mean, that's the perfect storm, right? Yeah. And the other thing is that the rich and powerful have built bunkers for themselves. And in their minds, in their little brains, they think that when the shit goes down, they can abandon the rest of us and we'll all die, which we will. And they can run down to their little bunkers and live out the rest of their lives. The problem with that is these idiots have been watching too many movies. Oh, by the way, before I get to that, these bunkers are not what you would think of. They're not like very sparse, looking like a cellar with shelves and, shelves of canned ham and shelves of bottled water and shelves of, ammunition, whatever you would need in an apocalypse bunker. These are beautiful things. You can see them. I think there's some YouTube videos that will actually show you some of these bunkers, or you can look up pictures on Google or whatever. But these are like multi-million-dollar bunkers. They're nice. They're gorgeous. They've got like waterfalls, promenades. It's like a shopping mall or something. They've got plasma TVs, stocked up with DVDs and whatever. They've got games rooms. I mean, these are extravagant bunkers. They're not, plain Jane kind of old style, 1950s nuclear bunkers. These are gorgeous things. But the problem is these folks have watched too many movies because they're imagining that they can live the rest of their lives, years, decades, and even their kids. I mean, their kids would have to live their entire lives in the bunker, because if the earth is fried, for equilibrium to be restored in the environment will take tens of thousands, maybe millions of years, if it ever happens. If the earth ever gets to restore itself, heal itself, it's going to take a long, long time. So you're talking about generations and generations and generations of these people living in these bunkers, provided things don't go wrong, like the air filtration system doesn't break down, or they run out of supplies, this and that, So this is what they're condemning their children to, and the grandchildren and great-grandchildren and great-great-great-great-great-grandchildren. But even they themselves, even if they've, say they're 30, 40, 50, 60 years old, they've got another 20, 30, 40, 50 years to go. They think they can live in that bunker for the rest of their lives, and that's just foolishness. I mean, look at this. Look at the space program, the various space agencies. NASA, the Russian Space Agency, Chinese Space Agency, European Space Agency. They select the hardiest people, the toughest people to be astronauts and cosmonauts. Okay, the people who are the physically and mentally toughest and most resilient. They put them through all these crazy tests. You can watch that movie, The Right Stuff, which is actually a story about the early American astronauts. All the tests and psychological evaluations they put on them, psychological tests, and they put them under pressure and endurance tests and things. It's crazy, and they still do that because obviously you're up in space. You can be up there for a long time. You don't want people going losing their shit up in space, right? So these are very tough people that are made even tougher by the testing and the training. They're trained to be physically and mentally resilient. And they go up in space, and some of them have spent a long time up there. I don't know what the record is. I think it's over a year. I believe the record is held by a Russian cosmonaut. It's been maybe 14, 15 months up in the space station. But even they can't handle any more than that. That's about the limit. A year and a half, maybe. And that's if you're trained. That's if you're specially selected. You've got a unique, level of mental resiliency, and on top of that, they've trained you to be even, more mentally resilient and tough, right? And even those guys can only stand, only a year and a half. That's still a friggin' long time to be cooped up in a confined space. And then these clowns, these rich and powerful government, corporate executives, and all these rich folks think that they can live out the rest of their lives, decades perhaps, in these underground bunkers. Sure, they're beautiful. Sure, they've got entertainment, they've got DVDs and music, but man, you're not breathing fresh air. You're going to be breathing circulated air, because the air outside is obviously going to be contaminated. For the rest of your life, breathing circulated air. For the rest of your life, never seeing the sun, never having any direct sunlight. You're going to basically turn into a mole person. And you're going to be in this confined area. It may be fairly spacious, but it's still going to be a very limited area. And rich people and politicians love to travel, right? They're always traveling. Politicians love to travel first class on the government jets at your expense. And no more traveling. You're stuck. You're confined in this limited, restricted area. They're not going to be able to handle it, man. And they haven't even been trained by NASA or or the Russian Space Agency. They've got no training. They've got no experience. Their whole life, has been a life of ease and luxury, right? Opulence. They're not prepared for this shit, No, I think within 2, 3, maybe 6 months max, they're either going to be killing themselves or killing each other. They're going to for sure lose their shit. There's no doubt. So again, here we have people who are living in a complete dream world. They think if the earth goes to shit, they can just run into their bunker, let the rest of us die, and they'll live happily ever after, in their multi-million-dollar bunkers. But it ain't gonna work that way, folks. Sorry.